This is a long episode, but it's one everyone should watch if they're planning an Italian wedding. Believe me, the red flags and advice in this episode are priceless. Sadly, supplier issues can be common when planning weddings, and they can really affect how you feel about your wedding, your budget, but most importantly, your wedding day. And in this episode, I'm going to take you through some of the issues I've seen couples face when planning Italian weddings. Ciao, I'm Lucy, Italian wedding planner and founder of Lista.com. At Lista, my team and I support couples planning Italian weddings. We want your life to be as easy as possible, and we provide expert advice, inspiration, real weddings, and a directory of trusted suppliers, and so much more. First up, I want to say that when I talk about these things, I'm actually really always afraid of scaremongering, but sadly, these things do happen, and they happen quite often. So the most important thing you can do here to avoid any of these issues is to watch this video, take on my advice, and vet your suppliers so carefully before you book them. Really put the time and effort into getting the right team through good research, building connections, getting recommendations, and hopefully you won't face any of these issues. Second thing to know is that the way the Italian wedding market works is on a model of commission, and that means that money is often central to these issues. It's obviously a cause of stress anyway for businesses and people planning weddings. No one wants to spend more than they have or to feel taken advantage of. The main avoidance tactic here is having clear contracts with suppliers. Sadly, that doesn't always avoid the scenarios, and I'll explain a bit more about that. Final thing to say is I'm a supplier myself, and I face tough business decisions every single day. It is hard running a wedding business and making a profit when you work sometimes 2 years in advance, but acting in a professional way with clear and transparent pricing and rules and contracts is absolutely the only way to handle being in business. Clear plans and strategies should be in place with all businesses, and this isn't always the case, which can also lead to below. So let's take some of these examples through one by one. The first one is the supplier asks you to pay more than you've contracted or agreed to. So for example, you've booked a photographer and then they decide further down the line they want to add some extra expenses. If you've had a contract with them and they knew at the point of signing the size of your wedding, the dates of your wedding, the location, the scope of the work, and this was all agreed and signed on, this should not change. If the photographer later realises the prices are high when they look up their flights, in my opinion, this is actually their issue. They are a business owner and they should know what they're doing and have quoted correctly at the point of signing, or forecast a good enough budget for this to cover their costs. If you've asked them to come for longer, travel differently, do something different, then that is another scenario and that does change the contract. In this case, I would gently push back on the request and give the reasoning that you've signed an agreement when they were fully aware of the scope of everything, and changes unfortunately should have to be swallowed on their side. One exception of this has been COVID, but I would argue that we're now well past that. Suppliers should know that travel costs are higher and that they fluctuate, and they should really have the right expense clauses in place to suit their own businesses. I know that couples can find it hard to push back on issues like this because they're worried about upsetting the supplier. Of course, do what is best for you. You might not want to unsettle things, but you should not be afraid that they will act differently towards you or your wedding if you do that. They are under contract to deliver a service and do their best work, no matter what, and if they don't, they are in breach of that contract. Second scenario is the supplier cancels the contract, and I've recently had an experience where a supplier cancelled a contract 9 months from the wedding due to personal reasons. The clauses of the contract were that they were to offer an alternative person matching their abilities if they couldn't do the wedding, and they did that. The client didn't want to hire this other person, so the contract was closed, ended as a mutual agreement. If your supplier cancels the contract close to the wedding, it could really leave you in the lurch with limited options. Luckily, in this scenario, there is time to find a solution. But a good way around this is to ensure that there's some serious clauses in some of the contracts that you sign. A, that if the supplier cancels more than 6 months before the wedding, you get a full refund of your deposit. B, that within 6 months of the wedding, they can cancel with extenuating circumstances, and if they need to do that, they need to find a replacement, like in this scenario, of the same value, so a peer. If they need to replace themselves with a peer, even if it's a couple of days from a wedding, if there are any extra costs, that absolutely has to be that photographer or supplier's responsibility. Another scenario that I've recently faced is a venue changing the location significantly after it was booked by a client. So a venue proposed a change to how the venue was going to look, and it was going to really change the couple's plans and the aesthetics that they had their wedding. It wasn't just a small thing, it was really going to change their wedding day, and it meant that they wouldn't have the setup that they thought that they were going to have when they actually booked their venue. Side note, in Italian culture, there's often a very strong line with things, and people don't really like being challenged and feedback. So if someone has an opinion or wants to do something, it can be really hard to shift it. So starting from this standing point, I always go into negotiations or discussions with very clear points and take away all emotion. In this case, we wrote a letter detailing the very factual impacts and specifics, and argued that it was actually a breach of the contract. The couple would not be getting what they had originally booked if this change went ahead. We also got other couples on board that were getting married at the same venue that were not happy either. This gave it more weight, and ultimately, after a very long time, it worked and the changes won't be made. Another scenario is that the venue adds on costs or new rules throughout the planning. And sadly, this is the most common issue that I see in planning. I could get quite passionate about this one because it's literally the reason we started La Lista. It is not okay. I strongly believe that it is a venue's responsibility to make sure all of the terms, rules, costs, etc. of working at a venue are clear when the couple book the venue, and anything other than this is disorganised and can actually be deceitful and greedy. When you book a venue, you sign a contract and you hope that everything is clear, but quite often other rules or restrictions can crop up through the planning. This can have a really big impact on the wedding you're planning. Let me give you some examples. First one is they might say halfway along that you must book something different with them so that they make more money, basically. I arrived at a venue in 2022 as the planner, and the venue had decided that the couple weren't paying enough despite the booking, all of the catering through the venue and lots of other things. They paid the venue fee, exclusivity fee, but they said that if the couple don't book a suite today, the day before the wedding, they would make problems at the wedding. I can't tell you how not okay this is. The venue is a business and it is immature and quite frankly fraudulent to act in this way. They're responsible for the prices that they've charged and agreed to throughout the planning, and it should never ever get to this. They were being paid very fairly and we actually had a really good relationship with them until this moment. In this scenario, after a discussion, and to be honest, I threatened to blacklist them on La Lista, I was left with no option but to pay for the suite myself because I couldn't risk worrying the couple with this problem and I couldn't risk any issues at the wedding. Another venue scenario that I faced was I was at a wedding last summer that I'd taken over at the last minute for a friend a few days before because they had had a family member get really sick. I had to solve a lot of issues, book some final suppliers and brief all of the suppliers in this time. And at midnight, a pizza truck turned up to deliver pizzas to everyone. The venue owner literally came out of their house and said that he did not know about the arrival of this pizza truck, and he asked for a commission of €500 to let it into the villa. He literally blocked the gates. The owner was well aware that the pizza truck was arriving. It was in the briefing form and in the timeline that they had received from me and talked through with me the very day. Despite this fact, they wouldn't accept it, and once again, we were in this position. We negotiated it down from €500 and in the end agreed to it. In that moment as a planner, we have to weigh up the disruption that it's going to cause, the impact on what the couple are enjoying, feeling. I'm not going to interrupt their day to discuss this with them. I'm going to take an executive decision. They paid for that pizza truck. In fact, I think they'd paid something like €5,000. So I wasn't not going to let it go through. And as I left the wedding, I said goodbye to the couple and I told them that I'd send them a debrief, that there was an unexpected cost that had come up in the day, that it was quite minor. And when I sent the debrief, I left it with them to discuss with the owner because they actually had a longer standing relationship with him. I told them that it had been agreed and we should respect that, but it was up to them how they took that forward. Sadly, this type of scenario can happen because some venues and suppliers have the mindset that you guys have a lot of money and that planners also have a pot of money of yours to do what we want with in these scenarios. So potentially justified, some planners will have a pot, like a reserve, that they can use in these scenarios, but I don't work in this way because I don't believe it's transparent. Over the years and after many of these types of scenarios, I have considered it because it would make some issues just go away, but I think it plays into the problem and I'd rather stand up to it and try and negotiate, and it does not always make me popular, but I think it makes me fair. And the final scenario of a venue is a couple that are actually a La Lista couple. They booked a venue that's not on La Lista, and once they'd booked it, a few months down the line, the venue said that they wanted to control all of the suppliers that worked at the venue for the wedding. Now, this isn't to help the couple out. This is so that they can get a commission. The couple have to go through the venue to book everything. This means the venue talk to every single supplier and negotiate their own commission on every single thing booked. There's multiple problems with this. The first thing is literally the delay. The venue aren't experienced at this and they are literally acting on your behalf. They will influence how your suppliers feel about your wedding, and they are going to cause a delay in the booking of your suppliers. They are going to mark up the costs. There are not many suppliers that are going to keep their cost the same and then give a commission to a venue within that cost. So if I was £2,000, I'm not going to give £200 of my money to the venue. I'm going to make the cost £2,200. So that means everything in your budget is going to go up, and all of that extra money is going to go to your venue. This should absolutely just be transparent in the first place. If a venue are going to host a wedding, they need to be clear about their costs, and if they want a venue fee like this, they just need to put it out there so you know when you're booking them how much your venue is truly going to cost you. The couple that I'm talking about are actually a La Lista couple, and they came on a live session in our membership, the club, and the bride went through how she handled this, and in the end that she went along with it because she was afraid of causing issues with the venue and she wanted to have a good wedding. If it's not contracted that this is going to be the case and you have a chance to make a decision about this up front when booking, there is absolutely no way that this should be happening. If you find yourself in this situation, I'd absolutely argue that you could very gently go back to your venue and say that you have not hired them for this role and it is not in the contract, and it is also not something that they have the knowledge or experience to do, and you will be sourcing your own suppliers. If they want to know who your suppliers are, you can send them a briefing a few months before the wedding and they can check your plans and your suppliers and check that it's okay with them. But I would also put in writing that you are not happy for anyone to approach your suppliers asking for any form of commission. Again, if they wanted to do that, that should have been upfront in your contract, and you can prevent them from doing that. This is the final thing. Suppliers not responding to your communications, an absolute classic, and a stereotype that Italian suppliers won't respond to you. Sometimes this is true. Sometimes suppliers can take a while to reply. I take a while to reply. Suppliers are busy and they have boundaries and they have lives, and I fully support them having these things. So firstly, I'd say have realistic boundaries and expectation. Once upon a time, as a planner, I would reply to inquiries the same day that they came in. Now I get so many emails, I can't do that, and we actually reply to them once a week in one go. So it can take like 5 days to hear from us. That's slower than it used to be and how I'd like it to be, but given my workload, that's how it works, and I can't do better than that right now. And there might be a lot of suppliers in this scenario, especially after a really, really busy period of COVID recovery. On the other side, as a planner, I know how hard it can be to not get the replies that I want when I need them from suppliers, and I've learned to do things well in advance so that when things do take longer, they're actually still when I need them to be. So if you're not getting a reply from someone that you've inquired with, I'd probably say move on. They've got your email and they're not replying. So if you want to work with someone like that you're going to have to chase to get a reply from, it's probably not going to be the way to go for your entire wedding planning. If you're waiting on a communication from someone that you've actually booked and you are working with, have a little sense check with yourself first. Is it actually urgent and really important? Would the supplier think that they need to get back to you urgently? If it really is, definitely chase it up. If it isn't, then trust them to get back to you when they can or when it needs attention. You are undoubtedly important to them, and the speed of their reply will not determine your status in their work world. Obviously, this becomes an issue when it really is urgent, and the most common times I've seen this play out is when couples that aren't my clients have asked for support from me because their planner isn't replying, or their planner isn't working to the timeline that they said they would or that they thought that they should be working to. So my first piece of advice here is understand how a planner works, their process, their timings before committing to them. 100% a planner should be able to tell you how their workflow usually goes, the time of year and seasonality of that, and roughly commit. Obviously things change, but there should be a kind of general sense of how things are going to go. If you find yourself in the situation where your planner isn't delivering to the timeline and you don't think that that's okay, so for example, they said they'd get you some catering recommendations in April, and now they've changed it to October after the season is over. You know that other couples are booking their catering right now, and you're worried it will mean that you don't have good options, or you have higher prices to pay, or actually that you end up with no catering. What do you do? Like any relationship, communicate. Ask your planner for a quick call to raise your concerns and understand their point of view. Maybe put it in writing first so that they've got it. A planner should always be available for urgent calls like this the week that you send the email, you know, even 10 minutes to raise any major concerns you have and just get it out there, clear the air. Obviously, hopefully you're coming from a place of trust and you know that they're experts, but you can raise legitimate concerns, and once you've heard their answer, if you still strongly believe you need to take action, i.e. the catering needs to be booked now, you definitely understand that this is urgent, you need to get this done. And we've seen scenarios where couples have actually taken this on themselves. So their planner has said, we can't do it up till October, and they won't budge on it. Firstly, take a step back and ask yourself, is the planner right for you? Secondly, you're off to do your own catering research because the planner won't do it. You've paid for that service, the value added here shouldn't be lost, and you shouldn't really be doing this alone. As you can see, it's a fine balance between understanding the importance and urgency and trusting your planner and ensuring that your wedding planning is going to plan. So this is all just about your expectations up front being really clear. So really well managed, the planner should be telling you exactly what they're going to do, and you should be asking for that information. You are responsible for that. You are secondly responsible for signing a good contract. You can ask for things in your contract, and you need to make sure that it's a good contract that you are putting your signature to. You're also responsible for developing a good relationship with the planner and good communication, timely communication. And if we're being frank, a planner's job is to deliver the contract that they have with you. So making sure that that has a clear set of deliverables in is absolutely key. Do not make the mistake of booking a planner that hasn't given you all of this information. If you're not sure what a timeline should look like or deliverables of a planner should look like, speak to us. We've got the ultimate tracker on the website, which has literally the step-by-step, everything you need to do and when you're planning an Italian wedding. It's really specific. It takes all sorts of factors into account. And if you're not sure what to ask from a planner and what their deliverables should be, check out La Lista, where we've got articles about the different types of support planners can give you. So there's a few of the examples that have come up, even just this year for me. The main takeaway is to trust yourself and just please get really good information before you book anyone in an Italian wedding. Good information won't ensure that you definitely don't go through these scenarios, but always remember as well that we are here. We're here to give you free advice. DM us, message us anytime, and if you're going through something tough, let us know. If you'd like more really frank advice from me, up-to-date real-life examples of this sort of thing, and tools and videos, check out our Italian wedding planning membership, the club. There's a community of us. We talk about this type of thing all the time. We'll also provide links to some of the tools mentioned in this episode below in the comments. Thank you for being here till the end. I'm sorry it was a pretty dark episode, but if you'd like more like this or on other subjects, please just comment below. Let me know what you'd like covered, and I'll see you next time.